In this video we are going to learn about numbers. Okay, so we all know, we all use numbers in our day-to-day life for many purposes. We've been learning about numbers since our very small age, and as we started growing up we started learning about fractions, and then we started learning about decimal numbers, square roots, and all, and under different names we've been learning about numbers. So today we are going to learn about one major type of numbers here, which we are using it till our 10th standard. Okay, so for you, this is mainly for the 10th standard children. So we learn about real numbers a lot. So numbers, mainly we have real numbers, and in many numericals, like in many of your topics, you will be learning about not real. The roots are not real. So then if it is not real, what is it called? When you say real, then something is not real. So not real abdina, you can say it is going to be virtual. When you think of science topics, you will immediately remember the word virtual, which is opposite to real. But in mathematics, so when we say real numbers, the opposite one, you call it as imaginary numbers, which you will learn as you go to your higher classes. In your 11th and 12th, you will come across these imaginary numbers. Okay, in what case did you say the numbers were not real? Especially when you had the determinant d is equal to b square minus 4ac to be a negative value. Okay, so if it is negative, what will happen to the root? The root, when you calculate, it will be root of that negative value. So imaginary is nothing but when you have a negative value under the root, you cannot directly find its value, then you say it is going to be imaginary, or you're going to say it is not real. Okay, now we are not going to get into that classification of imaginary numbers. Here in this video we will learn about real numbers in detail. We'll see what are the different types of real numbers. So what have we understood in our lower classes? So all that we will go through. So real numbers are everything. So broad classification of real numbers will be rational numbers and irrational numbers. Rational and irrational is the broader classification. Children in 10th standard CBSE board and Samachir Kalvi board would have come across this word irrational numbers, where you were learning about root 2, root 3, root 5 and all these concepts. Okay, so this would have been a new thing for you. So before we do a video for all that, I thought I will give you an introduction about the numbers. Okay, so those are all irrational numbers. So still we don't have much clarity about that. We'll keep it aside. We'll get into the rational numbers first, and then we'll discuss about irrational numbers. So what are rational numbers? Rational numbers, you can say that you can express it as a ratio of two integers. That is, you can mention it by some fraction a by b, where you can say b should not be equal to 0. Above b can be 1, 2, 3, any number. Okay, so b should not be equal to 0, because we all know that if the denominator is 0, then that final answer is going to be undefined. Okay, you will say it is going to be undefined. So the denominator should never be 0. So these ratios are fractions. So ma'am, what if the denominator is 1? We'll get a whole number. Yes, we'll get the number as such. So if you write a by 1, okay, so if you write a by 1, it is going to be a again. It is going to be a again. That doesn't make any much difference at all. Still it is called as a rational numbers, because a can be divided by 1. Okay, so such ratios are fractions. These kind of values can be expressed as terminating or repeating decimals. What is terminating? For example, if I want to write for example 10 by 100, 10 by 100, how will you write? You have two zeros here, so you have two numbers here. So before 2 zeros, we can put the decimal point. So it will be 0.10. After that, do you have anything? No. You can keep on putting zeros if you want, which will not have any value. Okay, so if you have a 0 immediately after the decimal, that will have a value, but not towards the end. Okay, so this 0.1 is terminating. The 0.1 is going to be a terminating decimal number. So what is a repeating decimal? Let us take the example of 10 by 3. So what you will get for 10 by 3, let me divide here using the normal division method. So 10 by 3 will be 3 3s are 9. So you will have 1, you will have balance, so 0.3333. So what is here? It is going to be repeating decimal and the value will be the same 3. How much ever you write, it will be the same 3. So you would have learned to write it as 3.33 bar you would have written, and or your teachers might have told stop by 2 decimal places. So you can write it as 3.33 also. So these are the ways you would have represented this. So this terminating or repeating. So this is your terminating or repeating decimals. Okay. Now these values you can see, they will be negative or positive, or it can be 0. Okay. These are all rational numbers and you will have it represented by the alphabet Q. Okay. Next we are getting into the classification of rational numbers. There you are going to learn about integers and non-integers. We are going to learn about integers and non-integers. So what is an integer? Abdina, integer is going to be non-fractional. An integer is going to be non-fractional. So it is only whole number. That means the denominator is always 1. The denominator is always 1. You cannot have it in terms of decimals at all. So that is a non-fractional rational number. You can say it to be either positive, negative or 0. Everything is included when you talk about integers and represent it by the alphabet Z. So from where does Z come up, Dana? It is nothing but Zahlen. In German it is called numbers. Okay, so that is your Z. The next one, non-integer. Non-integers is a fractional one, terminating and repeating. Okay, the first thing whatever we saw, it is terminating or repeating. Here also it is terminating or repeating and it is a fraction. If it is not a fraction, it is an integer. If it is a fraction, it is a non-integer rational number. Okay, now we will see the classification of integers. So integers, we see that you have your negative, 0 and positive. Okay, so whatever comes from your 0 and your positive will be called as whole numbers. Okay, those will be called as whole numbers, and all the negative integers you will be calling it as negative numbers or negative integers. So when you talk about whole numbers, it includes 0 and all the positive non-fractional numbers. It includes 0 and all the positive non-fractional numbers. Okay, under whole numbers what do you have? Natural numbers and 0. So when you talk about whole numbers, you will have to include 0. When you talk about only natural numbers, you will exclude 0. That's all. See, first we classified it under rational and irrational. So under rational you have two types, integers and non-integers. What are integers? Non-fractional numbers. What are non-integers? Fractional, terminating and repeating. Terminating and repeating, you should be very careful because the irrational number is going to be the opposite of this. Okay. So under integers you have two types, negative numbers and whole numbers. It is not positive number, it is whole number. So whole number includes 0. Whole numbers includes 0. So integers like that, negative integer, positive integer and 0. Positive integers are called natural numbers. Okay, positive integers including 0 is called a whole number. Okay, so now we've learned the classification of rational numbers completely. Okay, Next we will learn about irrational number now. That is our next point of concern. So we will learn about irrational number. So irrational number means whatever is not a rational number is an irrational number. We already have a big list under rational number. So what will not be abdina? See, we had one different thing, terminating or repeating. What is the opposite of terminating or repeating? You can say it is going to be non-terminating or non-repeating. Non-terminating or non-repeating. Okay. If you have a fraction like 0.454545, so is it repeating or non-repeating? This is going to be repeating. This is going to be repeating. It is repeating as a set. 454545, it is repeating. Okay, repeating does not mean just the same number, but even as a set it is going to repeat. Or if it is going to be 0.75637563 then also it is going to be repeating. So these are all rational numbers. These are all not irrational numbers. Okay. So except this, when you have non-terminating and non-repeating numbers, then they are called as irrational numbers. They are called as irrational numbers. But when you learned about irrational numbers, you learned mostly regarding the square roots, isn't it? You learned regarding the square root of 2, square root of 5, square root of 3, square root of 7, and you also learned about the combination of these numbers under roots. Okay, so we have some 2-3 points here to remember. Okay, the first one is that the even roots that don't simplify to whole numbers. Okay, even roots, some are even. Okay, you know that root 2 is an even number. But when you find out the square root of 2 using long division method or something, you can say that you don't get a whole number. But if you take the square root of 4, yes, it will become 2. So it is becoming a whole number. Then you call it to be a rational number Q. So this is a rational number, whereas this is an irrational number. Okay, next one is odd roots. So odd roots, so even roots you are telling this, odd roots kellame abdina, no, even for odd roots, if you have square root of 9, you are getting a whole number. So this is going to be a root 9 will be called as an irrational number, that is Q. Okay, so that also you are going to say that those who don't simplify to whole numbers. And then the few other exceptionals are the value of pi, Euler's number E, and the golden ratio psi. So all these are irrational. In this you will be learning about pi majorly in most of your numericals. You will come across this letter pi. Okay, so all these are irrational numbers. So now you would have understood why rational and why irrational. Rational means you have any number, okay, which can be expressed in terms of a fraction as a terminating or repeating decimal. Okay, a terminating or a repeating decimal, or even the denominator can be 1, but the denominator cannot be 0, and that number will become undefined. Okay, so under rational number you have integers and non-integers. Integers are non-fractional and non-integers are fractions. So integers we have two types, whole numbers, negative numbers. That is, whole numbers include your positive integers and 0. So these positive integers are called natural numbers. See, these positive integers are called your natural numbers. Okay, so I hope you would have got a clarity regarding these real numbers. When you go to your higher classes, you will learn about imaginary numbers even more in detail. So I don't want you to get confused with that. So as of now, you are not using the word imaginary, you are using the word not real. Let it be not real. Okay. So in the further videos, we'll be seeing regarding these concepts of irrational numbers and a few other concepts. Meet you again in another video, children. Thank you.